Welcome to The Unconventional Investor, where strategy, mindset, and money come together to build lasting wealth beyond the numbers. I'm your host, Michelle Moses. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today, or joining me today, really. This is going to be a solo show, and I am going to be talking about the Arizona tax credit today. And I wanted to talk about this because not a lot of people know about this. Like every time I talk to someone about it, they're surprised and they love it because it's really a way to redirect your tax dollars to a charity. So you, instead of paying Arizona State what their taxes are owed, you could give it to a charity. And I'm going to go through all the different categories. But so if you don't live in Arizona, you might not want to listen to this, or unless you want to know what our tax laws are like, you're welcome to listen. But I just wanted to briefly go over how it works, because I think a lot of people think that you pay your money, like let's say you work at a job, right? And your Arizona taxes are taken out every single week or every other week or however often you're paid. And I think people think that when charities are asking for these tax credits, that they think that it's over and above what's already coming out of their paycheck. And that is not the truth. Essentially, what can happen is that money that's coming out of your paycheck, you can direct it and say, hey, Arizona, I want my money to go to this foster organization or to this other charitable organization. So I really think it's a powerful way to support a lot of the organizations that you love without having to even come out of pocket with it. So the one caveat I will say is you do have to have cash on hand, just because if you are having money come out of your paycheck, every other week, then you're going to have the cash in order to give to the charity so that you can then get it back as a refund from the state of Arizona. So, if you're super, super tight on cash, I could see how this might be an issue. But I'll go through some ways that we can kind of mitigate that. So, and the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because I got my taxes done and we owed like $1,400 and some change. And my CPA was ready to file it. And I was like, no. I have only done, like 2 of my 4 categories. I'm going to go and I'm going to give it to an Arizona charity. And then the rest of it, I will pay to the state of Arizona. So I ended up paying like $160 or something to the state and then giving all the rest of it to charity. So again, most people do not know this exists, and I want you to know if you live in the state of Arizona and you pay Arizona taxes, you are allowed to redirect your taxes to some charitable organizations. So I want to be clear too that this is not a deduction. This is a credit. So a deduction will take off money so that your taxable income is lower. Right? So then you're not in the 10%, 10%, 12% bracket, 25% bracket, whatever the brackets are now. They change all the time. But so that's what a deduction does, right? So you put money in your IRA. So that lowers your taxable income. This is a credit. So just like in my example, I owed $1,400 in Arizona taxes. And then I went and I paid $1,200 to one of the organizations that is allowed. And I therefore only had to pay my $160 to the state of Arizona. So I really, this is a credit dollar for dollar. Like for what you're going to pay to the state of Arizona, you can 100% send it to these organizations, and you get to choose where the money goes. So by you logging onto their website, paying the amounts that I'm going to go over here in just a minute, you are choosing where your tax money goes. So it could be to a foster organization. It could be to schools. It could be to all kinds of other organizations that are for the homeless and food banks. And there's hundreds of organizations that apply and that have this feature. And you are allowed to donate, depending on if you're single or married, a maximum amount. And then that is dollar for dollar taken off of your Arizona taxes. So I think this is important because you can choose, the organizations that you care about, and then you can support them in a way. And I think that some people, you can't afford to give them $1,500, but if you were already going to owe $1,500 in taxes, then you might as well give them the $1,500. And I feel like it's kind of a win-win. Like it satisfies that yearning inside that you have to want to support these organizations. I love to support kids, foster kids, and animals. That's kind of my thing. And so to be able to give some of these organizations, like this year I gave to an organization that supports early childhood education, like if kids are having speech problems and testing for hearing, that sort of thing, and I gave over $1,200 to them, and to them, that's, a big deal. And so they're very, very thankful for that. Because a lot of times when you are in the charitable realm, a lot of people are giving $25, $50, $75, what they can. So a $1,200 gift they're very thankful for that. So I'm going to go through what some of these, what the different categories are. And then there is a website that I go to. I have not vetted this through them. I'm not having them on the show or anything like that. I'm just telling you what I do. So there are different categories. And if you go to the Arizona Department of Revenue website, you can see the different categories. You can see an entire list of all of the different organizations that are able to give. I go to ArizonaTaxCreditFunds.com. I think that organizations that are on that website, they pay to be on that website, so it's not everybody. But if you go to the Department of Revenue, then they have the full list of everybody that has qualified and gone through, the vetting process to be able to qualify for the tax credit. So these are for 2026. There are 4 different categories. So one is private school. The second one is public school. And I include charter schools, like they name it public school, but charter would also be in there. The third one is qualified charitable organizations. So that's like low income children, individuals and families, things like that. And then there's a qualified foster care organization. And that is specifically for organizations that do clothing and shelter for foster kids. So for 2026, the public school amount, if you are single, you can give $200. And if you're married, you can give $400. And I think this is really important because if your kid goes to a public school, they get the full amount of money. But if your child or someone goes to a charter school, those charter schools get over $700 less per child because they're kind of outside of the main system. And that's why you'll see in some of the charter schools that they don't have art, they don't have gym class, things like that. And if you can make up that $700 a kid, it really makes a huge difference to them. And so I'm always emailing my friends and all of that to try to get them to give their $400 to our school. And so because why would you pay it to the state if we could use it at our school and then support, art classes or whatever, having a speech therapist or a math interventionist or something like that at the school. It is hugely, hugely helpful to these schools. The next category is private school, and you can give $3,131 as a married couple, and then you can give $1,571 as a single. And that one is a little bit more complicated because it's in 2 categories if you wanted to give it, but I'm not going to go into those details here on the show. But just know that those are the amounts that you can give to the private school. So let's say that your child wants to go to a private school. You could then redirect your taxed dollars up to, the $3,131. You could redirect that and have that kind of go towards your tuition. They have all sorts of programs at the private schools, but at least it would help. The next category is the qualified charitable organizations that I talked about. And it's, low income children, individuals, couples, things like that. The maximum you can do for that for married is $1,009. And for single, it's $506. And then for the qualified foster care organization, the total is $1,262, and the single is $632. And again, you can go to ArizonaTaxCreditFunds.com and, give right there if you want to, or you can go to the Arizona Department of Revenue site and you'll see where there's a tax credit drop down, and you'll see all kinds of things on there. There is forest credits, energy credits, I can't even remember all of them. Oh, health insurance. Like if you're a business and you offer health insurance, you can get a tax credit. So there's a lot of tax credits on there, but these are the ones like specifically for nonprofits that I'm talking about today. And so you want to make sure that you are basically following the rules. Okay. So you want to go to their organization or to the Arizona Tax Credit Funds.com, and you're going to give the amount, and you could do less if you wanted to. So let's say, the max for the qualified charitable organization is $1,009 and you could only do $700. That's totally fine. You'll get a tax credit of $700. But just know that you need to have a receipt for that and then give it to your tax preparer, because there are forms that you need to fill out in order to qualify for it and claim it on your taxes. But it's really easy. I mean, there's not much to it. It took me like 5 minutes to do it this last time. And I think that's like the best way to do it. So if you're short on cash and you're like, I could never do that, I never have enough, I never have extra cash, right before your taxes are done, if your CPA or tax preparer comes back to you and says, hey, you owe this amount of money, or you can at least, when you go to give them the information, I paid this much in Arizona taxes, you can then take that amount that you paid and you could go give it to a charitable organization and then just get it back as a refund. There are instances where you'd have to take it as a credit. And so you'll want to, I don't know if I'm going to get into that, because I don't know that if you're having the charitable mindset, I think you're going to be fine with having it as a credit for your next year's taxes, so that you don't owe as much for the next year. But most people will just get a refund on it. There are some limits on your income and whether you can get a credit, or you can choose to just have them keep it so that you don't owe anything. I have a lot of retirees that do that. If they get the credit, they'll just say, hey, just keep it so that I don't have to pay the taxes next year. So it's really, really easy, and you get the money back right away. I mean, this year I paid the $1,262 to the foster care organization. And then, we filed taxes the next day. And then a couple days later, I was just paying a lesser amount to the state of Arizona. But if I was getting a credit, I would have gotten the credit within, the 48 to 72 hours. So it's not like you're out money for that long when you're doing it on that tight timeline around when you're doing your taxes. So please let me know if you have any questions about this, because I would really love to help a lot of these organizations. As you know, a lot of the government funding has been cut over the last year. And so I think a lot of these organizations would be very, very thankful if you thought of them. And if you talk to your friends or sent a simple email or spread the word about the Arizona tax credits, because I'm really surprised by the amount of people that don't know about them. And so I just think it's a great thing. So I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope I answered some questions about the Arizona tax credit. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. My website is mefinancial.net, and have a wonderful day. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you for listening to the Unconventional Investor Podcast. I hope you feel more confident in how you can grow your wealth using the strategies I shared in this episode. If you're ready to take the next step in diversifying your portfolio outside the stock market with alternative investments, head to mefinancial.net/contact us to book a 15-minute consult call with me. Let's discuss how we can work together to achieve your financial goals. Until then, I'll see you on the next episode.